Lesson 10. The Evolution of Modern Punishment. Michel Foucault, The Body of Condemned, from Discipline and Punish, The Birth of the Prison. A fundamental shift in the way states, both in Europe and North America, meted out punishment was to make punishment less public and less physically painful. Punishment went from inflicting bodily pain in public to restricting liberty and removing the offender from the public to be reformed. Punishments in Europe and North America increasingly went behind closed doors, with the creation of penitentiaries. As Foucault says, the body as the major target of penal repression disappeared, and the age of sobriety and punishment had begun. In the excerpt from his 1975 book, Discipline and Punish, Foucault juxtaposes two punishment systems: the publicly brutal torture of Damiens with the strict rules of a Paris prison, to show how different the two systems were and how much they had changed in 80 years. The details of Damiens' torture seem completely foreign to us, and this is part of the point. The detailed, stomach-turning account of an old-style punishment designed to produce terror in the hearts of the public who witnessed the torture, and thereby to reaffirm the power of the ruling class, cannot be imagined in modern Western countries. While spectacular, the execution of Damiens was not a typical punishment. Robert François Damiens was the last person in France to be executed by the traditional treason punishment of being drawn, hanged, and quartered, often referred to as the cruelest death on record. Damiens had unsuccessfully attempted to assassinate King Louis XV, thus attempted regicide. Perhaps hoping to influence a political debate between the papacy and the King of France in January 1857, Damiens rushed at the king, who was entering his carriage, and stabbed him with a knife. He inflicted only a slight wound and made no attempt to escape. He was apprehended and tortured. Michel Foucault was a 20th century philosopher who examined the social and historical contexts of ideas and institutions, such as schools, prisons, police forces, and asylums. He was interested in how institutions shape individuals. He was describing a whole pattern of cultural change involving the relationship between new forms of knowledge and shifting strategies and institutions through which power is exercised. Prisons became total institutions in which even the most minute details of the inmate's everyday life were spelled out in written rules, as evident in the rules of the House of Young Prisoners in Paris cited by Foucault. Thus, according to Foucault, there was a shift in objective. The state was after the mind or soul rather than the body of the prisoner. The objective was reformation through incarceration in an institution rather than physical punishment of the prisoner. The ideas of the Enlightenment were instrumental in bringing about this change. 18th century reformers in Europe and North America, who believed in the force of reason, wished to shift the focus of punishment from the body to the mind, to present to criminals the certain prospect that their acts would cause more pain than pleasure, so that, as rational beings, they would avoid committing illegal behaviors in the first place. According to Foucault, institutions, such as prisons, schools, seek to normalize the behavior of individuals. Foucault saw this as a major part of modern life and a way in which the state or government could exert influence and authority over individuals. The state makes the rules that govern how the school, or the prison, or the asylum is run. These institutions would thereby help mold the individual. Thus, according to Foucault, all that is needed, then, is to place a supervisor in a central tower and to shut up in each cell a madman, a patient, a condemned man, a worker, or a schoolboy. The physical pain of punishment is no longer the main element of the penalty. From being an art of unbearable sensations, punishment has become an economy of suspended rights. There is a shift from the infliction of physical pain to loss of personal rights, as the state now controls the body from a distance and according to strict rules. For Foucault, prisons are an example of a modern institution where discipline was instilled in the prisoner. Discipline would mold prisoners for release so they would not reoffend. The discipline taught in prison is similar to discipline in military units. Individuals are rewarded for conformity and punished for nonconformity to rules. The soldier or prisoner is forced to live and work under strict guidelines to instill discipline. Within the prison, there are various agents who control the prisoner, regulate their behavior, and help to instill the discipline. The warden, the guard, the doctor, the chaplain. The actions of the prison doctor help underline Foucault's point about how far modern prisons are from the public infliction of corporal punishment, the brutal punishments discussed in the reading. On the one hand, you have the example of Damiens, and on the other, consider the prison doctor, who keeps the prisoner in good health so that he or she can be executed by the state. Does this seem absurd, Or does it simply mean so because of how far our society has come from the public punishment? Consider the method of execution too. Admittedly, the Damiens example is extreme, but contrast the public hangings in a town square with the modern clinical execution method of lethal injection, which is about as far away as you can get from the torture of Damiens. As Foucault says, a utopia of judicial reticence. Take away life, but prevent the patient from feeling it. Deprive the prisoners of all rights, but do not inflict pain. Impose penalties free of all pain. The modern system of punishment seeks to eliminate pain from execution, whereas it used to be a fundamental part of punishments, whether whipping, being placed in the stocks, branding, or execution. On the history of the execution of criminals in New France, chronicles in some detail the various methods by which criminals were executed. An integral element to the author's argument is that religious ritual was an important part of the French criminal justice system, including the criminal justice system in New France. Religious ritual, specifically that of the Roman Catholic Church, penetrated many of the practices of the criminal justice system. As part of his argument, the author claims that Michel Foucault, in his work Discipline and Punish, places an overemphasis on the political characterization of criminal punishments and underemphasizes the religious. In some way, this can be a forceful argument, although Mook tempers it by suggesting his argument for the importance for the element of religious ritual in the French criminal justice system applies best to the 17th century, while Foucault's political interpretation applies best to the 18th.